Hi everyone, I'm Josh, and this is Method's Guide to the Coven of Shivarra Mythic. I'm going to talk you through all the abilities, explain how to handle them individually, and finally give you a commentary of our kill video to hopefully give you some insight into how it all fits together. For this fight you want 2 tanks, 4 healers, and as many ranged DPS as possible, as ranged are much stronger on the fight than melee, as they can multi-dot and are punished a lot less heavily by some of the position requirements of the fight. On Mythic there are 4 sisters, and the only Mythic specific mechanic of the fight is the addition of the 4th, the Mother of Cosmos. All other abilities function the exact same as Heroic and just deal more damage when I recap them anyway. Just like Heroic, the sisters have Shive Impact, so need to constantly be tanked at least 18 yards away from each other or they'll take 99% reduced damage. There is a sweet spot of between 18 and 20 yards where some abilities like Divine Storm and Splitting Ice can still cleave. However, unless you're really confident in your tanks that you can consistently keep them in this range, I don't personally think the risk is worth it, as this fight isn't an insanely tight DPS check or anything, and the minor DPS gain isn't worth the possibility of them being too close together and you losing a huge amount of damage even for a few seconds. So covering the Mother of Flames first, she has a pretty standard tank swap ability, Fiery Strike. You want to taunt this at 2 stacks. It also does a small frontal cleave, so as DPS make sure you're not standing in front of the sister, and as a tank try and position it away from DPS. She casts Fulminating Pulse. This puts a small circle around the target, ticks for 1 million damage per second, but the most important part of it is the final tick for 3.3 million damage on the target and in that small circle around them. This is clearly telegraphed. The person needs to make sure they're not going to clip anyone with it, and healers need to pay special attention to the Fulminating Pulse, as it's really easy to lose people to that final tick if they're not topped off. Use things like Iron Barks, Powered Shields and stuff before that final tick just to give people extra effective health. Lastly from Nero we've got the Whirling Saber. She throws it at a random player. You can clearly see where it's going to land on the ground. The initial hit will knock you back into a small amount of damage, but the most relevant part is the actual spinning blade that spawns and moves directly back to her. That's pretty much one-shots you if you stand in it, so just make sure you're not in a line between where it lands and wherever the sister is. Secondly, we have Asara, the Mother of Night. It's important to know that this sister doesn't melee hit at all. She pretty much chain casts, so you don't need a real tank to tank her. We used a balanced druid, but any caster with taunt can tank the boss just fine. Whenever she's active, she casts Touch of Darkness. This does a small amount of damage to 2 random players. You can pretty much ignore this, it's not consequential to anything. What you can't ignore are Shadow Blades. These spawn on the sister and you can see where they'll be going before they fly out. I highly recommend setting up some kind of audio cue in your bigwigs or DBM for this. Get in the habit of hearing it, checking the sister, seeing where the blades are going to go and making sure you're safe. If you do it like this, you basically can't fail, whereas if you rely on your awareness, you can get caught out a lot easier. If the blades do hit you, they deal just under 5 million damage, so they won't quite one-shot you, but on this fight, the knockback that they do can lock you into a lot of stuff that will one-shot you, so it's best to just avoid them completely. Finally from Asara, we got the Storm of Darkness. This works exactly the same as on Heroic, just does a lot more damage. She spawns a few safe spots, and after a small grace period, deals increasing damage to anyone outside of them. I find it best to stand close to these positions I've marked here, as there tends to always be a safe spot very close to them. Next up is a Mother of Gloom. She has a tank ability, Flash Freeze. This applies a stacking slow and hits you for 8.5 million damage. It's possible to freedom off this debuff and avoid the need for a tank swap specifically for this mechanic. However, there is some overlap with the Mother of Flames, so the swap timing will be dictated by the flame stack. Her second ability is Chill Blood. It puts a 10-second debuff that absorbs roughly 10 million healing and stuns for an amount of seconds based on the remaining absorb. Healers need to heavily prioritize the people affected by this debuff, especially during raid damage. I highly recommend emphasizing this on your raid frames in some way, making it glow or coloring the raid flame for people who have that debuff. Lastly, she casts a Frozen Orb. It has roughly 1 million initial hit and slows by 85%. The magnitude of the slow decreases the further from orb you are. You don't really need to play around this, just be aware of some tricky overlaps where the slow can put you in a dangerous position, for example getting to safe spots. The final Mythic only sister, the Mother of Cosmos, only has 2 abilities. Touch of the Cosmos, a cast she spams that hits a random player for 6.7 million fire damage. This one-shots most classes and it needs to be interrupted, otherwise you're just going to start losing people. You want to set up an interruptation to handle this. And lastly, Cosmic Glare. This puts a debuff on 2 players. It's easily visible in the 3D world by the green arrow above the head. After a few seconds, Fel shoots across the room in a line straight through the 2 players. Anyone hit by the Fel will take roughly 5 million damage. The best strategy is to have those 2 players stand perfectly still and let other people get out of their way. Now for the Tormented the Titans abilities, again these are exactly the same as Heroic, they just hit a lot harder. You've got the Fire Ads, where 8 ads spawn around the room and shoot fire towards the center. It's important to note that even though the visual continues across most of the room, the damage stops just over the middle area, and you can safely walk behind the ads, so movement isn't restricted as you might initially think. You don't need to save CDs for the ads, as they don't pose a threat unless they overlap with other abilities, but do focus them when they're up. The next Tormented the Titans ability is the Army. How you handle this is pretty composition dependent, so I can't give you a step-by-step guide, but any long duration CC is really strong. Mass Entanglement, a talent for druids, can CC 3 in a row. We ran 4 druids, so we had 1 mass entangle for each side, but obviously this isn't viable for anyone. Blood DKs can grip them together so you don't have to deal with the entire line, and assigned single target CCs can stop any you can't mass control. I highly recommend having assignments to these before you even pull the fight. There are 5 odds on each side, so 20 total, and some comps obviously won't be able to control them all, and in that case you want to take a couple out of each side so you don't have to deal with like an unbroken wall of ads coming towards you. The Torment of Golgoneth spawns 4 ads around the room, while any of these ads are active, moving within 2 yards of another player pretty much insta-kills you, so don't do it. Much like for fire ads, you don't need to save cooldowns or burn these down insanely quick, but they are a priority while they're up. Obviously during these ads, don't do anything questionable or unpredictable. Just play it safe. Even if you don't see anyone where you're going to blink, maybe someone else has the same idea, you blink onto each other, just slow movement, steady movement, play it safe. Lastly is the Torment of Amanthul. 4 ads spawn around the room and immediately start a 20-second cast. When they spawn, each ad puts 1 stack on the ticking debuff on you, and each cast that's successfully finished will add an additional stack to this debuff and heal the ad to full. So you need to burn down the ad within a cast. You want to save Bloodlust and CDs for these ads, and it's massively important to kill them quickly. Assign 2 to be killed within the first cast and make sure all DPS are prioritizing them. Healers want to try and delay their healing CD as long as possible, at least until after the first successful cast when you probably have 6 stacks. So now we've covered all the abilities, I'm going to talk you through the entire fight start to finish and explain how it all works together and the overlaps you need to be aware of. On the pull, the Mother of Flames and the Mother of Night stay down, so make sure you open on these. Don't bother multi-dotting the ads that fly away, the dots don't persist once they leave the area. You'll see here we actually drag the bosses within 18 yards of each other and get the 99% reduction, so ideally don't do that on your kill. Phil gets the Fulminating Pulse on him right now. You can see he makes sure he's not going to clip anyone, you know, that's the person with the pulse's responsibility, and he's very likely watching his own health before that large final tick to make sure he's safe. We've got the Storm of Darkness incoming. Phil's a mage, so he can stand pretty much wherever he likes, as he can always be safe with Blink. But if you're a less mobile class, make sure to stand in the safe spots that I showed you earlier. Phil gets the Whirling Saber, targeting him here. Quite conveniently, it's next to the boss, which is great. You know, it's pretty safe. It means that the Whirling Saber is almost removed from the fight. Not much is happening right now, but whenever the Mother of Night is down, you want to keep an eye on the Shadowy Blade timer. You see here she's about to cast it. You know, right now I'd look at her feet, I'd see where the blades were going to go, and I'd make sure that I was safe. We've got another Storm of Darkness incoming, and the first Torment of the Titans ability happens soon, which is the Fire ads. Important to note here, the safe spots appear a few seconds before the ads, so you have plenty of time to find a safe spot that's not where the fire is going to be. And see, Lorok multi-dots these ads. They're not very high priority, so he's correctly maximizing his overall DPS instead of popping cooldowns and trying to burn them down as fast as possible. Be aware you get 1 or 2 Shadowy Blade caster in these. The knockback is particularly deadly, obviously, if it puts you into the fire. See here, Lorok demonstrates that even though the graphic extends across almost the entire room, it is perfectly safe to walk right where he is right now, as the actual damage just goes to like just over halfway pretty much. The second Torment of the Titans ability in the fight is the Army. So you're going to see Lorok mass entangles the center ad here, and then cast a single target entangle on the corner ad. Halfway through this army is the Storm of Darkness, which is why you want all these ads CC'd before they can even start moving into the area. You see, Lorok has to make quite a sketchy dodge here that you would not want to happen. You see in the background we mass gripped 5 ads on one side to mass entangle them, just so we didn't have to use single target CCs on the very end ones. After that Torment, you've got about 20 seconds of dead time, and you get the first sister swap. The Mother of Flames jumps away, and the Mother of Gloom jumps down, so you're no longer dealing with Whirling Sabers and Fulminating Pulse, but Chilled Blood and Frozen Orbs. The next Titan ability right now is the Lightning ads, so you want to make sure you're not stacked on anyone going into these. You can see twice multi-dot as much as possible here to maximize overall DPS, because again these aren't super important to burn down as fast as possible. You get 1 Storm of Darkness during these, so even if you're safe within the Storm of Darkness, keep an eye out, be aware of others who might not be safe, because if you're on the edge of a safe spot, you can be blocking them from moving in because they're afraid of touching you and killing themselves or you. After these lightning adds, the Mother of Night's going to jump away and is replaced by the Mother of Cosmos, so that's the Storm of Darkness and the Shadowy Blades are gone, and it's replaced by Touch of Cosmos and Cosmic Glare. This is where you need to start interrupting. At the same time as this, you get the Amatil's Healing adds that you can see here, so we Bloodlust, we all second pot, and you want to burn down those 2 priority adds. The chilled blood during this heavy AoE damage is super high risk, so anyone that gets chilled blood at this moment wants to probably pop defenses, maybe Healthstone to help clear it as fast as possible. Around this point with 6 stacks is probably when you'd want healing CDs, as this is like the point in the fight with the absolute highest damage and the most risk of death. After killing these torments, you see twice Goblin jumps to a safe spot. You want to make your way out of the center of the room because we're pretty much straight into the fire adds again. You handle these exactly the same as you handled the first air set rather, but they were a little higher priority because you see cosmic glares happening at the same time and it's really tough to see throughout all the fire. You see one narrowly misses Roger there, and I think Roger actually gets hit in a few seconds because it's very hard to see through the fire, like I said. Roger shows here that you can walk behind the fire adds safely. You know, the damage doesn't extend behind them, so you have a lot of mobility within the room. Right now you're going to see exactly the correct way to handle Cosmic Glare. The 2 people who get it just stand perfectly still and let everyone around them dodge. If you look at the raid frames, you see the 2 people who got hit there actually get chilled blood, so that's really risky. You'd want to spam heal those guys as fast as possible. That's like a super dangerous moment for those 2 guys. You get the army again, you handle these exactly the same as the first time. It's not as important that you CC every last one, so if you have someone dead, you don't need to res them purely for their CC because you don't get the Storm of Darkness, you have a lot more freedom to dodge these army adds yourself. See, Roger gets chilled blood here, and on this one, the healers mess up a lot. I don't even know how this happened. Roger gets stunned for 13 seconds here. I mean, that's a massive healing failure. That should absolutely never happen in your raid. After the army, again, you get lightning adds one more time, so you want to make sure you're all spread. And at the same time, the Mother of Gloom jumps out of the room to be replaced with the Mother of Flames, so we're not getting chilled blood and frozen orbs anymore, but we're getting pulse and sabers again. You're pretty close to the boss being dead at this stage, so you can make the call to ignore these lightning adds and just focus on burning the boss down. We didn't, but you'll very likely have higher eye level than us, so hopefully the boss dies a little bit quicker for you. We chose to play these lightning adds instead. Almost regardless of your eye level though, what happens next is basically the end rage on the fight. You're going to get the second healing adds. No matter what else is going on really, you want 100% ignore these and just burn the boss. If you haven't had enough DPS to kill the boss by now, it's pretty unlikely you'd have enough DPS to kill this second wave of adds without heroism. So this is very much like a kill the boss before it kills you situation. And that's basically the entire fight. You know, the boss dies. It's not a ridiculously hard boss. It's mostly just play clean, play the mechanics, and the boss will die. The DPS check isn't very high at all. I hope this guide was helpful for you. This has been my first guide, so feedback is really appreciated. You can comment that below, and any additional questions I'm happy to answer personally. I stream pretty regularly on Twitch, so you can find me there. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.